and welcome everyone. We begin today in Britain, where the unfolding political drama since last week's inconclusive elections have taken a new twist. On Monday, Prime Minister Gordon Brown offered to resign as head of the Labour Party later this year. He announced the opening of formal negotiations with the rival Liberal Democratic Party to form a progressive alliance and block the Conservative Party from retaking power.
The reason that we have a hung parliament is that no single party and no single leader was able to win the full support of the country. As a leader of my party, I must accept that that is a judgment on me. I therefore intend to ask the Labour parties to set in train the processes needed for its own leadership election. I would hope that it would be completed in time for the new leader to be in post by the time of the Labour Party conference. I will play no part in that contest. I will back no individual candidate.
The Conservatives, led by David Cameron, won most seats in Parliament in last week's elections, but fell short of a majority. Labour came second, and the smaller Liberal Democrats, led by Nick Clegg, came a distant third. The Conservative Party has been talking to the Liberal Democrats in order to try and form a government, but Brown said that the Liberal Democrats now wanted to talk to Labour.
Well, for more on what's happening with the whole British political scene, we're joined now from London by veteran political commentator, writer, and Pakistani-born political activist Tariq Ali. He's written more than 24 books on world history and politics, 7 novels and scripts for the stage and screen. He's an editor of the New Left Review, where his most recent article is about President Obama at war, called President of Kant. His latest book, published last month, is the concluding novel of his Islam quintet and called Night of the Golden Butterfly. Tariq Ali, we welcome you to Democracy Now! Sorry you couldn't make it to the United States a few weeks ago because of the volcano in Iceland and the ash that kept all the planes on the ground. But Tariq, talk about what's happening right now in Britain.
Well, Amy, what is essentially going on here is that you have 3 mainstream parties. Labour, which has been defeated, the Conservatives, who have the largest popular vote and more seats in Parliament than anyone else, and the Lib Dems, the Liberal Democrats, who hold the balance. And they're all manoeuvring, the Lib Dems in particular, to see who is going to offer them more cabinet positions, who, and more importantly, which of the other 2 parties are in favour of changing the electoral system to proportional representation, so that in the next election the members of Parliament are elected on a proportional basis, which is what happens in most of Europe and which is certainly more democratic. Both the Conservatives and Labour are offering changes to the electoral system, provided the Lib Dems decide to back them. And these sort of games are going on, are very entertaining to the television journalists and people who report them. But a more fundamental point is this. All these 3 parties agree with each other on the economic measures that have to be taken, i.e., massive cuts in social welfare, public spending, which will hurt the poor, and to support the banking system and the financial system in this country. All 3 are agreed on that. All 3 political parties are agreed that the war in Afghanistan has to continue as long as the United States says it has to continue, backing the United States in Afghanistan. On smaller issues, there are odd differences in nuance, but there are no differences in substance. So I'm just bemused when I hear talks of a progressive coalition. What is going to be progressive about it? All 3 parties are going to do more or less the same thing, which is attack the poor.
For a non-British audience, though, can you say at least what the Lib Dems, the Liberal Democrats, the Labour Party, and the Conservative Party, what each are supposed to represent?
What they represent?
What each one, what bloc, what political ideology they're supposed to represent for people who don't live in Britain.
The Conservative Party are, of course, a party of the centre-right. Traditionally, they have exercised power for most of the 20th century. They were defeated in '97 by New Labour, which was Tony Blair's Labour Party, very much modelled itself on the New Democrats of Bill Clinton, moved the party to the right, positioned it to take power, and essentially carried on what the Conservatives under Margaret Thatcher had been doing. The Liberal Democrats are a traditional party of the centre, which sometimes agrees with the Conservatives and sometimes with Labour. They were enlarged when a group of right-wing Labour MPs left the party in the 80s because they thought the party had moved too much to the left. So technically, if we just want the labels, the Tories are centre-right, Labour and the Lib Dems are centre-left. But to be quite frank, in concrete terms, as to what's going on in the world and in the British economy, which is in a worse state in terms of debt than the Greeks, all these parties are going to punish the poor. All these parties support the war in Afghanistan. So what will happen if either coalition takes place is not going to be that different.
And Tariq Ali, there are calls now, major calls for political reform. The columnist in the Washington Post, E.J. Dionne, he writes this. He said, you can also argue that everybody lost this election. If 71% of the voters rejected Labour, 64% rejected the Conservatives, and Nick Clegg failed to achieve the big breakthrough many had expected. What are people calling for right now in terms of proportional representation?
Well, we don't know because there hasn't been a poll carried out on what most people want. But the Conservatives have today offered a referendum on changing the electoral system, which I think is a start, saying that let's put it to a public debate and let's vote on it. And I hope, because I've always been in favor of it myself, that a majority would vote for a proportional system of voting in Britain. That is now on the table, and we'll wait and see whether the Lib Dems accept that offer or not.
We're going to break, then come back to this discussion. Tariq Ali is a British-Pakistani political commentator, writer, activist, and editor of the New Left Review. He's speaking to us from London. This is Democracy Now! We'll be back in a minute.